What happens when we are a student? We are into a lot of influence of lot of school of thoughts, right? Some people will advise in their strong suit. Different people will have a different strong suit. People will suggest, let's suppose somebody good in mathematics will suggest that you should be thinking about statistics and then pursuing data science.
You as a developer, you are developing your applications,
right?
Okay. Now you can upgrade yourself to build the cloud native application. If you want to get an edge, so what you can do is you can search for various AWS projects that is available.
Okay.
You can try implementing those using your free tier account.
So now, given the the progress in this technology in the cloud space, what is the next big thing that is going to happen? Hello everyone, welcome to yet another episode of the Intellipaat podcast. Today's conversation will help you to get a step-by-step roadmap to become a cloud engineer. We have a very special guest with us, Mr. Rochak Agarwal. He works as a lead DevOps consultant at AWS. He has work experience of more than 14 years, which means he has seen the emergence of the cloud computing in the market to its glory in recent times. During the conversation, Rochak highlighted that cloud is for anyone who is willing to learn it, whether you are from tech background or non-tech background. You could easily pick up cloud skills and land a job in the IT industry since it's very high in demand. Throughout the conversation, you will learn a lot about cloud computing, AWS as a cloud service provider, and how you can become job ready. So if you want to build a stable and lucrative career in IT industry, this podcast is all you need. I honestly believe that this conversation will help you to get an in-depth overview of how you can get started in cloud computing. So please make sure to stay tuned right until the end. So guys, today we have Mr. Rochak Agarwal with us, and he will put some light on the idea of AWS and the cloud computing space, which is a budding technology. And I really appreciate his time to share the insights from his experience. So Mr. Rochak Agarwal, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay. So Mr. Rochak, since cloud computing, when we hear, we generally don't understand what exactly the cloud computing is. The space is very new. Mm-hmm. I like to know more about cloud computing, and I want to know how you decided to get into the cloud, the space of cloud. How did you plan? So kindly help me with your the career journey.
Okay, sure. So first I'll start with your first question, that what is cloud computing? So cloud computing is basically computing over the internet. Okay, so let's say, for example, if I say in a very layman terms, we guys are using Google Drive.
Okay.
So Google Drive is also an example of cloud computing, basically.
Okay.
So anything that we are on, so it's an example of on-demand computing that we are accessing over the internet.
Okay.
So it's on the very layman terms. We can obviously have private clouds and all, but something over the internet, over a network, and it's a on-demand computing.
Okay. So Mr. Rochak, I'd like to know, how did you get into this platform? Because when you might have started your journey, cloud computing might not have been in the notion of the,
Correct.
Young engineers.
Correct.
So how was your journey?
Okay. So I started with the Infosys Limited, and I was working there as a system administrator. Okay. So basically I was working on various middleware technologies. So middleware is like where our application get deployed.
Okay.
Okay. And then around 2014-15, DevOps was a very buzzword these days.
Okay.
So I was very lucky to start working in the DevOps area from the very beginning.
Okay.
So I started with DevOps, implementing continuous integration, deployment automations and all. Then around 2016-17, things were started moving towards the cloud area.
Okay.
And AWS being the first mover advantage, it has the oldest cloud.
Okay.
And recently we have Azure and GCP also catching up. Mm-hmm. And I've been fortunate enough to work on all these clouds.
Okay.
And majorly I've been working on the AWS cloud. Mm-hmm. So then I from the DevOps. So basically, previously we were working on the on-premises servers.
Okay.
Your application is getting deployed on the virtual machines, which is hosted on the customer's data center.
Okay.
Okay. So the cloud computing, so AWS, Azure, these are the cloud computing providers, cloud service providers, basically we can say. Mm-hmm. So they actually helps us to host these virtual machines on their data centers. Okay, so when we use cloud computing, we are hosting our virtual machine, our application on their data centers. Now, there are various models of cloud computing, like one is the infrastructure as a service, where we deploy our virtual machines, the servers. So it's a kind of a servers that you hosted on the on-premise. Now they are hosting on the Amazon's data center.
Okay.
Now another model is the platform as a service. So let's say, for example, you are using a service, a database. Now, to use a database, first you need a server. Then, on top of that, you will be installing and configuring your database.
Okay.
Now, these cloud service provider giving you the ready-made service.
Okay.
So you can go and start using these services from their platform itself.
Great.
And third is a software as a service.
Okay.
So software as a service is like, for example, if I can say Google, Gmail. Gmail is an example of a software as a service where you do not need to configure anything. Gmail is a software created by Google, and we are using is over the internet.
Okay.
So these three models are used in the cloud computing.
So if we want to conclude it in a nutshell, so we have three different sort of cloud services.
Correct.
So starting with the first one is
Infrastructure as a service.
infrastructure as a service. Then the second one is
Platform as a service.
platform as a service. Then third one is
Software as a service.
software as a service. Great. So just out of curiosity, I want to know, since you had a background of IT, you did your bachelor's in information technology. Now, will it be easy for someone who comes from a non-IT background to cope up with such a vast, space of cloud?
Okay. So in cloud, there are different streams, you can say. So one is, let's say, for the cloud architect. Then if you are coming from a certain specialty like AI ML engineer, or you are coming from a database background.
Okay.
Okay. So there are different streams. So when we talk about cloud engineer, inside cloud engineer, there are multiple streams. So you can be a developer who are developing the cloud native applications.
Okay.
Okay. You can be an architect who is developing the complete infrastructure where your application will be deployed.
Okay.
Then you can be an AI ML engineer. So there are multiple type of services available in cloud computing.
Okay. So let's suppose somebody wants to step into the cloud zone, I mean, the domain of cloud, and someone who does not have much coding experience. So on a scale of 0 to 10, how difficult will it be?
No, it will not be difficult. So coding is not required.
Okay.
So as I said, there are different streams. Okay. So if you, let's say, first step is you are becoming the cloud admin or a cloud administrator.
Okay.
So for that, coding is not required extensively.
Okay.
But when you will be working with cloud, you will be doing certain automations, multiple automations you will be doing. So then you would be needing a coding language.
Okay.
Now that will completely depend. There are each cloud will support multiple coding languages. So if you know any one of them, that will work. And if you do not know as well, then you can start with the basics. And then you can step up, because these cloud, they have a complete set of services. So for example, if I talk about AWS, in AWS, if you want to create your infrastructure, in creating the infrastructure, you will be creating your databases, you will be creating your virtual machine networks. The first step is you can go, if you're not familiar about any coding language, you can go to their web console and you can spin up these things manually. Okay. But as you grow, let's say if you get deployed in a project where you need to create 1,000 virtual machines, so now you are not going to create these 1,000 virtual machines manually. Okay. So then there is something called as infrastructure as a code.
Okay.
So in AWS there are native services available, like CloudFormation is there, and there is a very recent service coming, that is CDK. It's been called the Cloud Development Kit. So now you can write your CDK in multiple languages, like TypeScript is there, Python is there, and Node.js is there, Java is there, multiple languages. So if you even does not know any of the language, so you can start with the CDK, and because the CDK template that we write is very specific to AWS. So if someone does not know, does not coming from the programming background, they can also learn from it.
Great. So that means stepping into cloud won't require as such the coding experience is not required. And a person can learn eventually while gaining some experience, right?
Yes.
And if the proper modules and if the things are provided while the person goes under the training in specific crafted modules,
Exactly.
it will be very easy for him to get into the cloud space, right?
The first step is whoever is want to understand about the cloud computing, they need to understand. So the cloud computing is comprised of the basic domains. So first is, let's say, compute domain. In compute, there are services like EC2, then container services like Elastic Container Service and Kubernetes Service. Then we have Lambda, Elastic Beanstalk. Second domain is the storage domain.
Okay.
In the storage, like S3 is there, files, the EFS Elastic File System is there, and other services. Third is database domain. So in database domain, RDS is there, Aurora is there, and fourth is security. And security services are there. Multiple security services available.
Right.
AWS Inspector is there. Config management is there. And in the last, we have monitoring service. So AWS provide a very rich set of inbuilt service like CloudWatch, CloudTrail, AWS vulnerability management. Multiple services are there. So first, we need to understand these services. So let's say if I want to develop an application in cloud, and if I do not know how networking works in cloud, then where I am going to deploy that, right? So like you will be deploying some application that you want to private to your users. You do not want public access to those applications, right? So first we need to understand the infrastructure level components of AWS. For that, we do not need any programming language.
Okay.
Once you are well versed with these technologies, with these terminologies, you know how to use them. Then on top of that, you can write some automations.
Okay.
Right. So for example, automation is you are uploading some file in S3 and you want that, let's say, for example, an image you are uploading in S3, and you want that as soon as you are uploading that image should be compressed.
Okay.
Right. So now for that, this is an automation. You need to write some function that will do this functionality.
Okay.
But you need to be first aware about how these things work in the conjunction.
Okay.
Right. So that is the first step. Once you are aware about all these, then you focus on these automations and the coding languages.
Great. Now, when we speak about, because it's about harnessing, vital information, data is the, we can say the new power system is data.
Data is new oil.
New oil, yes, of course. Now, there is a thing called security and monitoring. This is very important.
Correct.
Now, how vulnerable these data are given the infrastructure that we have, how secure they are, because most of the clients who will be putting up their, very sensitive data, relying on the AWS cloud services and various other cloud services. So what has been the advancement in this field?
Okay. So the first thing is the data. As a cloud architect, your job is to create an infrastructure that is highly available, secure, and fault tolerant. So highly available means if one of the component your application going down, then your application should not suffer.
Okay.
Okay. Second is fault tolerant. So your infrastructure will be consist of multiple layers. Like database layer will be there, front end layer will be there, back end layer will be there. So fault tolerant means if something happen at one layer, it should not impact the overall performance of your application.
Okay.
Third is the security, as you rightly pointed out. So AWS is completely secure in that manner. So there are multiple security services specifically. And on top of that, whatever services you are going to use, whatever data that we are putting in AWS. So there are encryption mechanism available.
Okay.
So there are multiple type of encryption available in AWS. So for example, if I talk about S3, so S3 is like, if I draw a direct comparison, S3 is like a Google Drive,
Okay.
where you are uploading your data, downloading it, sharing it with multiple people. Now, whatever data you are storing in S3, it's completely encrypted.
Okay.
Okay. So there is two type of encryption. One is data in rest. So whatever data you are storing is completely encrypted.
Okay.
Now, second type of encryption is data in encryption in flight.
Okay.
So let's say you as a client, you are accessing that data.
Okay.
So from S3 till your client location,
Okay.
till your computer, the data will be flowing.
Okay.
So in flight also data is completely encrypted.
Encrypted. Okay.
And you can encrypt this data with the help of either S3 provided keys or you can create your own custom keys.
Okay.
So that you can have more control over the encryption part.
So, as you said, that cloud architect is responsible for designing this entire mechanism. Now, when we think about an architect is a person who has a very flexible, creative thoughts in terms of managing the things, and
Exactly.
when and where required, he may make certain changes depending upon the requirements. So, do we have that flexibility? A candidate who undergoes this type of training, when he is put into a responsibility in an organization, does he have that flexibility, or is it too traditional? How is it?
Yeah. So AWS provides complete flexibility in that manner. So so let's say if you want to achieve something, there could be multiple ways of doing that thing.
Okay.
For example, let's say if I want to deploy a database in AWS, so one thing is you create an EC2 virtual machine, and on top of that you you install your database, you configure your database, and start using it.
Right.
And second way is you directly go and use the RDS, AWS RDS.
Okay.
Now you can do this both way.
Okay.
Now, based on your customer's requirement, you will choose what your customer wants.
Okay.
So that way, AWS provides complete flexibility, and not about in terms of the infrastructure, implementation also. Like you can use CDK, you can use cloud formation. So it's completely flexible in that manner.
So most of the candidates who have that, idea to explore, because brainstorming, at times there are candidates who like to brainstorm and to do something different from the basic tradition. I think they have this good option to explore in the cloud. They will be able, because problem solving approach is different from individual to individual. Everybody has a different thought process when it comes to a problem statement.
So as an architect, our first requirement is to understand the customer's problem. Then based on the customer problem, we will be developing the architecture. So for example, let's say if I continue my previous example, now the customer want to have a database. Now they are saying they want a complete control over the operating system. So then in that case, you might not go with the platform as a service, because there you will use as a product. But if you want the configuration and customization options, then you should go with the former options.
Okay. Now, since it is dealing with the data that has been provided, so does it, let's suppose somebody who comes from a web designing background, mean stack or mun stack developer, full stack developer, or else a backend developer, can he upgrade his skills to cloud? Will it be easy for him?
Okay.
Or is there any relevance? I mean, I want to know whether there is a relevance, a person coming from a different domain from the same industry.
Okay. So see, first thing is you as a developer, you are developing your applications.
Right.
Okay. Now you can upgrade yourself to build the cloud native application. Okay. So for example, still you will be developing, let's say in React.js or whatever technology you are using. So let's say, for example, your application has two components that is talking to one another. Okay. Now, for example, any e-commerce website you see, when you do the payment, there will be a payment service.
Right.
So your whatever items you are adding in your cart, that will talk to your payment service, and you will do the payment accordingly.
Right.
Now there will be some messaging service in between.
Okay.
Right. So if you are doing on-premises development, so you need to configure this messaging broker, whatever it is Kafka, it is RabbitMQ, and whatever technology you are using. Right.
Okay.
So if you elevate to cloud, so in the cloud there is always already a messaging service available in the form of SQS. So it's called Simple Queue service. There you can tweak your code to become more cloud native, so that you do not need to worry about the underlying messaging platform. Messaging platform is given by the AWS to you. You just need to use it. So for example, another example is like say S3. If you are developing on-prem application, so then in that case you need to worry about where your storage would be. Here S3 as a storage solution is already available to you. You just need to use it.
So it's basically a one-stop solution.
One-stop solution. Multiple services. In AWS, there are more than 250 plus services are available.
250 plus services.
And maybe if we talk 6 months or 1 year after, there will be more services will be added.
So now, given the the progress in this technology in the cloud space, what is the next big thing that is going to happen?
So the next big thing is that is happening right now is first is there's something called as a low code or no code environment. Okay. So low code and no code environment is where let's say you need to design a website.
Okay.
So instead of writing each and every code for a website, now in your website there will be some templates.
Okay.
You just drag and drop these templates and the code will automatically be ready for you, and you just need to customize that code.
Okay.
So that is, you can call it as a low code or a no code environment.
Okay. So that means it will give more scope to the people who want to dive into this space coming from different industry.
Exactly, yeah.
People coming from non-IT industry can also fit into this
Yes,
community,
definitely.
right?
Now, if you want to design your website, what you do is you go to that platform, you create a basic template, then you will call your developer, I have created this basic template. Now you customize
like, let's suppose most of the people used to use WordPress to
yes,
develop
yes,
a website. So it is exactly the same
yeah,
thing.
on the same lines. And the second thing is generative AI is very vastly being used.
Okay.
So there is a new service from AWS called Code Whisperer.
Okay.
Okay. So there it's like IDE. So if someone is doing the development, they are using like Eclipse or Visual Studio Code. So it's more or less same, but it has the advantage of auto completing your code.
Auto completing.
So if you are writing something, it will like give you a template that you should write that.
Okay. So it will be more of a suggestive tool.
Exactly.
So that it can make it even more perfect. Right.
Perfect,
and even time efficient. And in this industry, time is money.
Time is money.
So that's a new thing that is going to happen, and that's really wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah,
so as you mentioned about the time,
Right.
so time is all about the cloud computing. So let's say for an example, you are an entrepreneur. You have some idea, right? And you want to develop your app, and you want to make it accessible to customer.
Okay.
Now, if you go on premises way, so then you need to procure the hardware, you need to purchase the hardware, you need a place where you will be putting up the hardware.
Right.
Then you will be installing the software, configuring it, and do all these things. Now, it will take a considerable amount of time.
Okay.
Right. Till the time maybe you are completing it, maybe someone else come and release that software.
Right.
With the cloud computing and with the AWS, what you need to do is you need to log into your AWS account, create your servers. They will be ready in a minute or so.
Okay.
And you can deploy your application. So your whole stack, depend on the complexity of your application, will be ready in half an hour.
Okay, so it's basically outsourcing your storage headache to someone who is very professional. So you're leaving the hard stuff to the pro.
So if I'll say leaving the complete IT infrastructure to the cloud service provider.
Okay.
And you focus on developing your application.
Right. So Mr. Rochak, for example, like a lot of the students, when we were growing up, we had a lot of, thoughts. When somebody will ask me, when I was in my class 10 or 11, people will ask me that what you want to become, and I'll have a different aspiration. As we grow and realize certain things, then we'll change our aspirations. So generally what happens when we are a student, we are into a lot of influence of lot of school of thoughts, right? Some people will advise in their strong suit. Different people will have a different strong suit. People will suggest, let's suppose somebody good in mathematics will suggest that you should be thinking about statistics and then pursuing data science. Somebody will suggest for web development. Somebody will suggest for you learn coding and enter into IT. There will be a lot of suggestions, lot of hustle and bustle. So how do you think, let's suppose a student wants to start his career, what are the basic things that he should know, and how can he focused on the cloud computing, and why exactly cloud computing and why not others? So what are the advantages that he'll get?
Okay.
Please put some light into it.
And it's a very good question, because I have seen people who are cloud engineer, but they are not clear about their basics. So I'll talk about from the very beginning what a student need to learn to become a good cloud engineer. So first is they need to have a basic understanding of any operating system.
Okay.
Linux is preferable because most of the organization, they use Linux as their operating system when they are deploying their application. Okay. So basic Linux knowledge should be desirable. Like it is, you can say it's a mandatory, because whenever you will be implementing or configuring anything on EC2, you need to run basic Linux command. So basics of Linux or any operating system would be the first thing.
Okay.
Second thing is you should be aware about networking. And it is a very critical part. I have seen many people, they start working on AWS, they are working with load balancers and everything, but they does not understand what is a TCP and UDP protocol, on what port HTTP listens to. So these are the absolute necessity. because in AWS there will not be a separate networking team. You will be the complete owner of the networking in AWS.
Okay.
So in networking, you should be aware about OSI model of networking and some basic networking protocol and which ports these protocol listens to. For example, HTTP listens on port 80. So at least this knowledge is required. And on top of that, how IP addressing works, what is a BNet and subnet mask, all these things as to, and these are the things, these are taught in college as well.
Okay.
So operating system and networking, these are taught in colleges as well. And on top of that, basic understanding of database as well.
Okay.
So these are some of the things. If you know these things, because if you do not know these things, then you have to learn it afterwards. Because without knowing these things, you cannot become a good cloud engineer. You can create a virtual machine, go to console and create a virtual machine, but whenever an issue comes, and if you do not know, if you are not clear about the basics, then you will be like haphazard in a haphazard situation, right? So these are the things, and if you know any of the scripting language, that will be like cherry on the cake. It's not a prerequisite, but it's good to have. So either Python or Shell will also work, because when you are doing your daily day-to-day works, you want to automate certain things, and you can automate these things if you are.
So that means, in a nutshell, we will require 4 things. The very first thing is the idea about an operating system, preferably Linux. Second is networking. And the third one is to have a knowledge on databases. And the fourth one is scripting. Right? So these are the 4 things that will be required. Again, these are the certain things that you should be prepared. And these are basically taught in the colleges.
And there is one also common question that we get is programming knowledge required to become a DevOps or a cloud engineer? So initially, you do not need a programming language experience to be a good cloud engineer as well, until unless you're not specifically working on the application development side.
So what is that application development?
So application development side is, let's say you are developing an application. Then you need a programming language experience. Otherwise, if you do not know, because there are so many programming languages, and you cannot know every one of them. So being a DevOps engineer, you will be good without the programming language as well.
So how competitive the space is? I mean, let's suppose how a person will start his journey when we think about a corporate hierarchy. So a person having this basic knowledge, where will he start and where will he end? I mean, from zero to hero, what is the journey?
So, like in AWS also, there are multiple level of certification. So a student or whoever they want to start their journey in the cloud, they first try to focus on the AWS Solution Architect Associate course. That is my recommendation. That's the very first course everyone should do. Unless you are a developer, there is another course that is AWS Certified Developer Associate. So if you want to develop your application, then you can go for the developer associate. But for the general audience, solution architect associate is a good way to go ahead. These courses will lay your foundation. They will build your foundation. They will introduce you all the basic services in AWS, how networking works, how databases work, everything you are going to get. Then if you are operating, like you want to become an administrator. So there is a difference between an administrator and architect. Architect is the one who will be designing the infrastructure, and the administrator will be the person who will make sure that the infrastructure is working at the optimum level. So for that, they can go for the AWS SysOps Administrator course. Now that is also a very good course, in that a student has to go through MCQ as well as the practical labs as well. So there will be like given the scenarios, and you need to perform those scenarios. Then only you can pass those examinations. So that's about the basic level. Once you are done with the basic level, then you can go on the higher level. So that level is a professional level in AWS. So there are 2 examination on that level. So if you are becoming a DevOps engineer, now there is a lot of overlapping between these tracks basically. So if you want to end-to-end product implementation, you might need to do both of these courses. So first is the AWS DevOps Engineer Professional Examination. That a developer can also do, or a DevOps engineer can also do. That will help you to do the complete automation of deployment of your application from starting, like developing your code, then how the code is getting built and how it is getting deployed to AWS servers, and the complete monitoring and everything. It's a very good course. And then second course is AWS Solution Architect Professional.
Okay.
And that is the extension of the first basic course. And here you will go in depth about each and every AWS service. And the highest level is the specialty level.
Specialty.
So in the specialty, let's say there are multiple specialty exam. So if you want to become a database engineer, focus solely on the database side, so then you can take AWS certified DevOps database specialty exam. Similarly, we have machine learning specialty exam, we have security specialty exam, and networking specialty exam.
Okay. Now, speaking about this certifications and examinations, definitely there are a wide range of exams that you need to qualify in order to get into a specific position and the job roles, right? Now, let's suppose if a candidate, completes the requisites. I mean, the 4 requisites that you mentioned. Is it necessary to undergo a certification, or he can expect himself to be placed in an organization by clearing, the group discussion, GD, personal interviews, and technical interviews? Will that be sufficient?
Okay.
And if not, how important the certificates will play a role, and what is the relevance in terms of getting into the first job?
Okay. So see, the certification is basically if you're learning something. So AWS creates the certification path in a very good manner. Okay. So that way it will help you to channelize your studies as well.
Okay.
So that is like, apart from getting the credentials, it will help you study. Like if I go and search for the AWS documentation, how should I know which service I need to learn?
Okay.
Right. And let's say if I'm learning EC2, then what topics I need to learn at a basic level. Right. So that way, these certification helps you to channelize your study, what topics you need to learn in EC2, what I need to learn in networking, what I need to learn. So that way, these certifications are very important. But again, coming to the point, if you, let's say, clear the certification, but you do not have the required knowledge, let's say you studied and then you somehow clear the examination, but you do not have the required knowledge, then they will not help you to get a job. So first is you should have the knowledge.
Okay.
So if someone is studying, so there is something called a free tier AWS account.
Okay.
So you can create the free tier AWS account with your personal email, and there AWS will give you $200 of credit.
Okay.
Okay. So that you can play around with AWS services.
All right.
So each and every type of services you can play around. There will be, of course, some limits put on them, and to learn the technology, these limits are sufficient.
Okay.
So that is the more important thing.
Okay. So in the cloud space, we have seen so many options available. Like there is GCP, there's AWS, there's Azure. So how a candidate should choose which one to specialize in or which one to prepare? I hope the fundamentals remain the same.
Correct.
The functioning and the fundamentals remain the same. But how does an individual determine or decides which particular cloud space he should be focusing on?
So the first thing is students should not be focusing about how many cloud providers are there. They should be focusing on one cloud provider.
Okay.
Okay. So if, let's say, someone is learning AWS, instead of learning multiple, let's say I'm completing AWS Solution Architect Associate, then I'm going the Azure Administrator.
Okay.
It is not the right way to do the things. Instead, what they need to do is, if they are learning AWS, first they complete Solution Architect Associate, then they go deep in AWS.
Okay.
Okay. The reason for that is each and every cloud service provider is more or less same.
Okay.
So if I talk about AWS, in AWS there is EC2.
Okay.
The similar service in Azure is virtual machine, Azure VMs, and in GCP, Compute Engine.
Okay.
So instead of going multi-cloud, first, whoever is learning, beginning, they need to go deep in one cloud.
Okay.
And AWS being the preferable cloud is that because it's widely used, it's a market leader. There are multiple services that is not present in other cloud service provider. Leading companies are using the AWS, and there is huge demand on
So that means
AWS
if somebody focus on AWS, the absorbability of that particular candidate into the professional space is greater in comparison with the other cloud options
Exactly,
available?
yes. Because most of the enterprise Fortune 500 companies, they are using the AWS products,
Okay.
AWS services. And if you know AWS Bell, you can easily, let's say, tomorrow the requirement change, your customer is using Azure as well, so then you can easily adapt to other cloud service providers as well.
Right, right. And now, given the situation, how volatile the market is, how competitive the market has become, so in this race, how much can a candidate expect? Because a person who is already continuing with some other industry, switching into this domain, changing the industry completely, coming from non IT to IT, or else coming from IT, a different domain, but to this domain. So, a very widely asked question is, ki, what will be the compensation that they shall receive? So, what is the expected range of compensation that a candidate, a fresher,
Okay.
or a fresher or a person who has just begun his career can expect? What is the minimum that he can expect?
Okay. So, see, first thing is to answer the question you ask about the volatility in the market. So, as we see, during the COVID time, all industries were suffering, but IT people were getting multiple jobs.
Right.
Right. And in the IT also, cloud computing is in the huge demand.
Okay.
Okay. Because the companies are moving towards the cloud arena because they want to release their product as soon as possible,
Right.
without overheading the physical infrastructure.
Okay.
They just want to focus on the application development and leaving everything on the AWS or Azure for that matter.
Right.
Right. So there is huge demand of the cloud service professionals, even if it is an administrator, architect, and right now there is a new stream called the cloud security professionals as well.
Okay.
Okay. So if I talk about at the fresher level, you will get a good salary. You can easily get 5 to 7 lakhs starting.
Okay.
And that is very good in comparison to other streams. And this is just the beginning. If you
Okay.
have the right skills, the sky is the limit.
Oh, wonderful. So, Mr. Rochak, as you said that you completed your graduation undergrad in engineering, information technology in the year 2011, and then you were working as a software engineer, software developer, and eventually you transitioned into cloud space in the year 2016. Now, at the time of transition, because definitely it was a new idea, a novice idea that came into picture. So, how was the transition? Was it smooth for you, or were there any challenges? If there were some challenges, please tell us more about it so that our new gen learners can prepare themselves and get fit into the cloud space very easily.
Sure. So actually, when I started working with the cloud, so I was working with a US telecom giant, and they have decided to migrate their complete application portfolio over to the public cloud. Now, the challenges that we face sometime is that let's say customer is working on a legacy product. Okay. Now that legacy product might not be available in the cloud service portfolio.
Okay.
Right.
Legacy product means?
Legacy product means like there are some companies which develop the product which is not like a mainframe application.
Okay.
Right. So those type of offerings were not available on the cloud service provider.
Okay.
So one thing is right, either you need to migrate your application to some other operating system or redesign your application. So for one example is I recently faced this also. One of my customer is working on an application and they decided to migrate it over to the cloud. Now that application is running on AIX operating system. Okay. Now AIX is a very old operating system and this is not available in the public cloud in AWS basically. So one thing is either you need to migrate this to a new cloud, a new operating system. In that, you need to redesign your application. So that involves the effort at the application development side as well.
Okay.
The changes in your code. So you might not find the exact customization that you are having on the on-premises. So that was one huge challenge that we face time to time. Second is like initially when we started working it, so skill was a very big challenge. Like even for me, I was a newbie and I was not aware about how services behave. Because when you work on the cloud, now the infrastructure is with the AWS. So the SLAs and all these things are in the control of the cloud service provider.
Okay.
So those adaptability, it takes time.
Okay.
Right. Sometimes, let's say, for example, I was started working with Git. And Git is a source code management system.
Right.
Right. So that was working fine in my on-premises environment, but it behaved completely differently in the cloud environment. So those type of challenges we face on the technological front as well.
Okay.
So, but we learn from these mistakes and evolve ourselves.
Of course, of course. So I just wanted to know and understand, since you were already a software engineer, you were developing softwares, you're already doing fine. I mean, 2011 to 2016 is a good chunk of time that you have already invested. So what made you switch into the cloud?
Okay, so for personally, I am not very good at coding. Okay, to be honest. So for me, like I can write scripts and all. So that way, I found cloud very interesting.
Okay.
Because here programming is not a prerequisite.
Okay.
And here you will be creating complete infrastructure. It's like an architect. Like you are creating a complete building.
Okay.
Right? What are the blocks of it? So that very excites me.
Okay.
And since I do not want to do coding as well at a very extensive level, so that way, like I find it very good. And whatever programming here we need to do in the cloud. So for example, let's say Terraform is a very prominent tool nowadays.
Okay.
And the reason for it is Terraform is cloud agnostic. Cloud agnostic means you can work with any cloud.
Okay.
Okay. So most of the organization, they are multi-cloud nowadays. It's not like they are on complete AWS. Some of their application are running on Azure. Some of their application running on AWS. Maybe 60% or whatever the ratio could be, anything. So they want a tool which is cloud agnostic. So previously we have talked about CloudFormation and CDK. That was AWS specific.
Okay.
But with Terraform, we can manage any sort of cloud. And more than these three famous, there is Hawaii Cloud, there is IBM Cloud, Oracle Cloud, Alibaba Cloud, multiple cloud providers are there. Right. So if in Terraform we write code, okay, but we do not use any sort of programming language in that. Okay. So Terraform uses its native programming language that we call it HCL, HashiCorp configuration language. Okay. And it is very easy to learn.
Okay.
Okay. If someone does not know anything about Terraform, they may come to beginner to mid advanced level in 6 hours.
Oh.
Yeah. So the learning curve was also
very quick.
Very quick. Of course, like many things you will learn when you like implement the things, but you will come in a shape that you can start writing the code.
Now, speaking about the implementation, of course, having a transition also should have a good portfolio to fit into the responsibilities of an organization who will be hiring for a cloud professional, be it be a cloud architect, be it be a engineer. So how and what are the projects that one should have so that it can frame into his portfolio? What are the, good project examples that you can help our audience?
Okay. So one good example is, let's say your company is running their application in the on-premises environment. Now, they want to move their application to AWS. So there could be multiple ways of doing this. One is like kind of a lift and shift, where whatever the application is running in the VMs, you just use AWS VM and deploy your application. So that is one, like many companies want that way. So that is one project you can have. Then let's say you can do some modernization in your application.
Okay.
Modernization essay is instead of directly using the VMs, you may use other services. Like for example, if I talk about in one of my recent engagement, there was one web application that was running on the customer virtual machines.
Okay.
So we migrated those and we run them over the AWS Elastic Beanstalk. So AWS Elastic Beanstalk is a managed service where you do not need to even worry about the AWS virtual machine. You just need to upload your code and your code will be up and running in no time. So those type of migration is very necessary to have.
Okay.
And third is you can have a DevOps project in AWS.
Okay.
Right. So once your code is in AWS, now because the code development is an eventual process. It's not like you develop all the code at once. The maintenance and the enhancement keep going and going.
Okay.
Right. So once your code is in AWS, wherever it is running, it may be running on the virtual machine, it might be running on the Elastic Beanstalk, it might be running on the containers. Now, how you are going to implement the next enhancement? right? So implementing that, how you are integrating your CI/CD pipelines with the AWS, that is a very good project to have.
Okay, so that means lift and shift, migration, and DevOps are certain key projects that one should have hands-on
And
experience.
to like expand on the this question, now when we talk about the DevOps pipeline,
Okay.
so DevOps pipeline nowadays is not only about deploying your code.
Okay.
So there is like multiple terms, buzzwords you heard, like ML ops, there is a chat ops, there is AI ops,
Right.
and then there is a DevSecOps.
Okay.
So DevSecOps is basically implementing the security best
Patch.
practices
Okay.
into your deployment pipelines.
Okay.
So when we are saying implementing the DevOps pipeline, it's not only about deploying your code, but implementing what are the security related things will
Okay.
be there from the application vulnerability point of view. From, let's say, if I'm deploying my code on the EC2, so is there any security vulnerability on the operating system patch level? So all these things one need to do.
Okay. So, Mr. Rochak, as you said that it's a continuous learning process, and eventually a person will find himself into a good fitting job. Now,
Correct.
getting into a right job requires a process, and there is a requirement of successfully completing that process, right? In this journey, when a candidate finds himself facing a recruiter, what is the general recruiting process? What are the expectations that the recruiters usually have from the freshers or for a person who will be switching into the cloud?
Okay, so for that, like if someone want to secure a job in the cloud space, so if he or she is a fresher, then they need to focus on their basic concepts.
Okay.
Because since you are a fresher, people know that you have not worked on any of the AWS projects, right?
Right.
So you need to focus on the basics. So you should know how this service works in conjunction, right? For example, load balancer with the virtual machine, load balancer with the EC2 instances, or and so on. So focus about the basics of networking, how IP subnetting works, and all these things. So basic is absolutely necessary, and on top of that, your concept should be very clear.
Okay. Technical concepts.
Technical concept should be very
clear. And of course, primarily the projects and the skill sets that you have eventually done.
And then of course, like if you want to get an edge, so what you can do is you can search for various AWS projects that is available. You can try implementing those using your free tier account, and then you can showcase them so to your recruiter that I have done so and so. So the benefit of that is, if you tell them your portfolio of the project, then discussion will revolve around these project, and then you can confidently answer the question that you are putting up to you.
So the generic resume that we usually see put up on a table of a recruiter generally has the basic details, what all roles and responsibilities that they have had before. Now, how does the technical resume, like what is the key highlights of a technical resume that has been submitted? What are the things that it should have?
So technical resume, if you should have done any certification, then you should mention that.
Okay.
Then the key point is if you maintaining any project portfolio, you should be mentioning that.
Okay.
And then what are the key services you are working?
Okay.
You are knowledgeable about.
Okay.
And there are 2-3 things the recruiter see in your resume.
Okay.
One is Terraform.
Okay.
Okay. Then there is Kubernetes.
Okay.
So if you put up these things in your resume, there are high chances that your resume are going to get shortlisted. And then any of the scripting language.
Okay.
So these are some of the things if you mention in your resume. Then
Okay. So that means in our technical resume, the projects and the tools that we have got acquainted and experienced during the work on the project, that we should definitely mention.
Exactly,
And particularly these 3 things should always be there, so that your resume push to the top, and you will be the most desirable candidate to get absorbed into the organization and go. Great. So, Mr. Rochak, since we had this discussion, and of course, this is very inspiring for our young learners who will be taking their path towards cloud. What is the highlights? I mean, what is the advice that you want to give to our young learners? What are your 2 cents from your experience you want to pass on to the people, to the individuals who want to make their career in cloud?
So, I have said this before as well. Don't go multi-cloud.
Okay.
So go deep in one cloud.
Okay.
there is no benefit of going multi-cloud. You can go multi-cloud later in your career, but if you are starting, go deep in any one of the cloud. That is the most basic thing to do. Second is you should be very clear about the basic concepts about the networking, operating system, and scripting.
Okay.
So if you clear, if your basics are clear, then you're good to go. So
Okay.
before starting your cloud journey, clear your basics, because that is the most important thing to do.
Basics, fundamentals, then focusing on one particular
Because
cloud.
I have seen people who start working on the cloud, but they do not know basic Linux commands as well. So it will be very challenging for them only when they will start performing their duties.
Right, right. So basically, a candidate who wants to take up the career in cloud must have a good fundamental, that is very
Very
important.
important.
Proper skill sets, knowledge of the scripting languages, as well as the different tools that are required in cloud is very important. And again, fixing up with any of one particular cloud is
And
very
go
important.
deep in that cloud.
And go deep into that. That is very
That
important.
is very important.
Rather than investing in their time in learning multiple languages and confusing themselves.
Exactly.
And overburdening. So rather they should focus on one cloud.
cloud.
They should go deep, learn the tools. Scripting will be a cherry on the cake, and that will definitely help them securing a right job in the right organization with a right salary.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Rochak, now we have come to the end of this podcast, and our learners must have got a lot of insights about the cloud and how they should start their journey in the cloud. Your journey was very inspiring, and I'm very sure this will boost their interest in the domain of cloud. And of course, the insights that you have given, the advice that you have given will make their career go skyrocketing. I thank you very much once again for giving us your valuable time.
Thanks for having me. I hope this conversation helped our learners in a good way.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.